Today, we're going to talk about 3 particular aspects of Argonaut by Forrest Buchtel. 1 is going to be exploring our technique, 2, that pesky F sharp, and 3, planning your breathing. The very first measure of this entire piece has some tricky fingerings, and therefore we're going to have to pay attention to our technique. What the notes are is E, F, F sharp, and G. And that theme comes back multiple times throughout the piece. And the interesting thing is it starts off with something that's a little tricky on our technique. E and F use very few fingers. E, we have the thumb and the first finger, and F, we just use the thumb. But then for the F sharp, we have to put down all of our fingers very quickly and make sure that we do something in our throat, which we'll talk about a little bit when we come to that pesky F sharp. So we go from F to putting all of our fingers down, and then we have the G. And the F sharp and the G cause 2 different potential issues. One is making sure our fingers move at the same time for the F sharp. And for the G, we want to make sure that we have a good size half hole. And so for those who are still figuring this out, when we play our G, we don't cover this tone hole fully. Instead, we shift our finger down just slightly so we can get a little bit of air. If you see my tone hole right there, you can see that there's a little bit of air that could escape. And that's really crucial to getting this G, which is not the low one, but the one up an octave, to come out clearly. So let me just play an example of what I'm talking about between F to F sharp and getting our fingers down, and then F sharp to G. Okay? So if I play it nice and slow, I can practice putting all my fingers down at the same time. Now, just because you're putting them all down at the same time doesn't necessarily mean that the instrument will respond, because sometimes your finger is covering a tone hole, and sometimes it has to push a key down. To cover a tone hole, obviously that means we have to seal it properly, and to push a key down, we actually might need to put these fingers a little bit ahead of the game so they have time to push the key down and lift up the key. So when you put your fingers down, you have to practice going nice and slow to figure out, okay, what may be a problem? Because if you don't put the fingers down all the way, you get any variation of that, where it's not quite clean, it kind of growls and does something weird. The G will also have a similar issue, but only focused around one finger, so that's a lot easier. When you get this F sharp all settled and you move to the G, you have to make sure that half hole is open, or else this will happen. What ends up happening is it drops the octave lower, because the only difference between a low G and an upper G is that half hole. So technically, if you don't use a good size half hole, you're technically playing the lower note and it's going to want to drop down. So make sure the hole is big enough so that you can keep it up in the proper range. So I would really work on the technique of these first 4 notes, focusing on 1, making sure you put all your fingers down properly for the F sharp, and practicing what that means. And 2, make sure you have a nice half hole for the G. And sometimes you have to experiment. Some instruments like a larger half hole and some like a smaller. And a side note, half hole doesn't mean you cover half of the tone hole. It's just a name for we need to let a little bit of air out. And you have to decide, based on practicing, which size is the appropriate one. So it might be a sliver hole, or it might be a little bit bigger than a half hole. It depends. So just keep that in mind, and you have to experiment, particularly since this motive comes back a lot. Okay, on to the second thing. So that pesky F sharp, in addition, for it to have a lot of fingers to put down. F sharps on bassoons, a lot of different ones in the various octaves, are naturally sharp on our instruments. So what we have to do is we have to predict that they're going to be sharp, and we have to adjust in advance so that we don't end up going really, really sharp. So for instance, if I were to just play this with a consistent airstream and no change, it would sound like this. When the F sharp pops out more, it's sharper, and if I have my tuner on right here, you'll see that it'll start going into the red area. So this is where a tuner is really, really helpful. So what you'll need to do in order to counter the F sharp is you want to use the same airstream, don't back off on that, and don't be afraid of it, but instead you're going to want to open up the back of the throat. That seems a little weird. I call this the bullfrog. Ribbit. You open up back here, so ooh, if you're to sing really low note, and getting all this down here to open up. And in doing that, you're creating a little bit more space and the pitch will go down. So you can experiment by doing something like this. And purposely bend it flat, and then back sharp and bend it, and then slowly get it so you're right in the middle. So you can just play around with it and feel that flexibility. And then eventually you want to be able to just play the note in tune. And then you add on the note before and after it to experiment how to get there. Once you practice that, then you can pick up the speed and go a little faster. So make sure to experiment with that F sharp by using a tuner and using the back of your throat, opening it up so that you can get it in tune. The last thing is about breathing. This piece in this edition is really nice. It has breath marks in there for you. When you see these little commas in the piece at the top of the staff, that means you're supposed to be breathing there. And when that's the case, follow those instructions. They're very, very helpful. Normally, in this type of piece, because it's a slightly faster 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, you can make it all, in this case, 9 measures. But because the tune has a short, 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 long, short, long, short, long, short, 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 long, we have a tendency of wanting to breathe after every long note. So it would sound something like this. So you end up taking a lot of breaths, and that's actually not a good thing because we want to get our air out. So we want to take longer, bigger phrases. So make sure that you're breathing particularly where they say to, because it will help you in the long run. What ends up happening if you take too many breaths, you take a large breath, you take a little air and you push it out, but then you take another breath and you do a little air and push it out, and then you take another, and so far your lungs just keep filling up, and it doesn't get a chance to exhale, and your body needs that. So make sure you're doing nice long phrases and then following these breath marks, because then you won't feel like you're taking in too much air. And also, it will sound more musical because you're thinking of the longer phrase rather than chopping it all up. All right, so in regards to Argonaut, 3 things. Watch your technique on the E, F, F sharp, G at the very beginning. Really listen to that F sharp because that's the one that's going to be the most out of tune of those 4 notes. And then make sure you're following the breath marks that are written in here. They're really helpful, so you might as well go for it, and it'll be easier in the long run to play this entire piece. The last thing I want to say is talk to your professors, your teachers, your music directors about counting the rests in this, because there are moments when the piano would be playing with you and playing something by themselves. So if you're going to be playing this for an audition, you can ask your teacher when you should count and when you don't have to. I would personally say count all of these. The rests are nice because it gives you a chance to take a breath and breathe. And there are really small notes in this part, and those are cues. So you can think to yourself in your head and follow 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2 as the piano cues are following along. So you can just follow in your head and then jump back in when you have to play. But talk with your professors, your music directors, your band teachers about that so they can help you prepare for your audition if that is something you're going to be doing. Best of luck. Good luck practicing.